Those guys, that package store is awesome. You guys need to get down there. It's worth the drive. They have the best inventory in East Texas, hands down. I've been to all the stores. Drive down there if you're looking for some spirits for the weekend and wine. They have it literally all. Drive down there, go visit that group. You're going to get the most professional service as well. You're going to get that one-on-one greeting and the one-on-one service that you're not going to get out of the box stores. Without further ado, we have Patrick Willis here tonight. Thank you so much for coming on.
Andrew, thank you.
Yeah, Patrick, you are a consultant for nonprofit development, correct?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, cool deal. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of what you do now, let's talk a little, you're from Tyler?
We did. Well, actually, it was about 4 when we moved here, but I went through the schools, Rice Lee and TJC UT, so I've been here a long time.
Yeah, so what was life like growing up here in Tyler?
You know, I guess for when we live in a community of this size, and of course at that point, you know, we were much smaller in a community. But, you know, typical childhood, enjoyed lots of friends, and we actually lived out a little bit. We in my later teens, my folks bought a home in Troop and restored it.
Okay.
And my mom's a retired stockbroker and was the first female stockbroker in Tyler to do that. That's one of the reasons why we came here.
Yeah.
She worked with E.F. Hutton at the time. Some of your listeners may be old enough to remember E.F. Hutton.
Okay.
And their great commercial, when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. You know,
yeah, okay.
Tagline. Kind of went through the ranks in the investment world. She did and managed the Dean Witter. She bought the Dean Witter franchise here, which is now Morgan Stanley.
Okay.
And my stepfather was retired early, and my half brother came along, and then I've got my dad and his wife live in Oklahoma City, outside the Oklahoma City area, and he's in construction and drywall, and I've got 2 stepsisters and a half brother over there, and just great group of folks, but kind of your traditional growing up in a small East Texas town.
Right.
It's amazing to see, for part of the time we lived out and in the Flint area, and you know, you could come in, there was nothing between there. And, you know, you drive in and what was the Ramada Hotel, the Sheraton, you know, now it's the Holiday Inn on Broadway, the Tower Hotel was built. That was the only thing you could see. And the rest of it was just kind of trees. So it's certainly changed a lot in the, you hate to say how long ago because it makes me feel old to say that. Right. Past 40 years or so, 45 years.
Right.
The community's changed quite a bit.
Were there any early influences in life that prior to going to school, because we'll get into your education here in just a minute, but were there any indicators of kind of what you were going to do? Obviously, you didn't go down the financial pathway. So.
I think about that now. My mom was real successful in her business, and her partner now that is running it. And I think about that. That just wasn't a strong interest, and it would have been a great opportunity to work with her and her business, but it just wasn't. That wasn't for me. I'm not terribly good. I learned that I can help people raise money, and I can help people spend money. But they don't want me investing it or accounting it for them. That's why we have other good folks to do that.
Right. My dad was in the railroad business, and you know, it was one of those things where it was just kind of intriguing, especially young, because you see people ride trains.
Yeah, trains are cool.
My grandfather was a caboose guy,
cool.
And so like it was very cool listening to their logistics, and you know, we're sending this train with 150 cars to there, and then when I got old enough, he was like, "You don't want to do this. They're going to own you. They're going to own you, and so your whole life's going to be about that." And so I completely understand that. But going back to early life, looking back and reflecting, were there anybody approach you, or any maybe some nonprofits that you were involved in before college where you got a sampling of
It happened with the American Heart Association.
Okay.
One of the stockbrokers, and I know they don't call them that term anymore, financial advisors.
Right.
In my mother's office, he and his wife were the chairman of the 1993 American Heart Association hardball,
Okay.
and asked if I would like to get a group of friends. This is, I mean, you tells you how long ago this was. We did the valet parking
Right.
for the event. Well, you wouldn't let, several 18-year-olds do that now, right? And all the but that was our deal. We all dressed up and in the 1920s theme. We dressed up and helped, do that, park the cars, and it was neat because I organized a group of my friends, and we were doing something for, it was their sponsors party, so it was the major donors of that event, and that's really kind of where I liked that. I liked volunteering. I liked being involved in causes that were, greater than yourself as an individual. I like people. I like working with people, bringing together. There's nothing more satisfying than working on a great cause or project with a group of people, because you all have shared agency in it, which is great. But I will tell you that was a wonderful time, because it was right in high school. But before that, I really would like to credit Pam Listener, who was my debate coach and speech coach in high school. And I was one of those people. I was not terribly athletic. I didn't, I wasn't gonna set the world on fire in the world of finance or science. I didn't really know the direction, and I had lots of friends in different areas. Your typical kind of breakout of middle school and high school folks.
Yeah.
The different folks. I had friends in all those groups. I just hadn't really found an area, and I was on a UIL trip for something, and I can't even remember now what I was doing with that. But I was talking, and she said, I want you, she was on the bus as one of the teachers, and she said, I want you to come by my office, and I want you to you talk well, and I want you to do this. And I thought, there's no way I could get up in front of people and talk. I mean, that's one of the most terrifying things you can do, really, right?
Absolutely.
And she was like, no, I want you to come by. And I was like, you're very nice, man, but I'm not interested in that. I don't. But she saw in me something that I didn't see. And Pam went on to be at what was then Robert E. Lee High School, and then later on in her career, she retired from All Saints, I believe. She retired and went back and worked. But she was one of the first ones. So I did debate in high school and in college, and I did speaking, extemporaneous speaking through the UL competitions. And it really set me up for success, being able to do that, being able to have the confidence. I mean, I still get nervous when I get to speak in front of people, but I do it often. I MC a lot of events for community things, and you kind of go into this zone where you really almost don't even see the people. You're just performing. It's really what it is. You're all of a sudden you're in performance mode. Right. Whether you're in it, very similar to theatrical acting or any of that. So I really, Patty Wilbanks, Becky Berry, those were two other history teachers that I had that I really, really valued, and they really helped me kind of find my placement. So those three ladies, especially in particular, when I got to high school, when I got into the debate and speaking program, Pam was just, I wasn't supposed to do, that was one thing she didn't like in speeches.
That's okay. Trust me, I do it a lot.
She would take a tennis ball and throw the tennis ball at the wall every time you said, and I tell you, it cut down on the times you said it. Sure. It really made a huge difference, but that was a little trick of the trade. She didn't obviously hit the students with it, but she may want to do some of them. But that would probably be one of the highlights of somebody first investing.
Exposure. Gotcha. So you mentioned a little bit about here I am going into education and going into college. So you go into some debate there, and you're going locally.
Yes,
to TJC.
I did. I was not sure what I wanted to do. My first stab at career was hotel restaurant management.
Okay.
I went down to the Conrad Hilton School of Hotel Management in Houston. Toured it. I think I like hotels, I like traveling, and I was exposed to that as a child. my family went on some really nice vacations that we were afforded to be able to do that as kids. And I was always fascinated by hotels, and then there was a show out when I was probably about 10 to 12 called Hotel. And I think it was just the glamorized version of what that looked like. And once you realized you were going to be doing some not so glamorous work, and it's hard. I mean, the restaurant business and the hotel industry, I mean, it's a 24-hour. I have a lot of respect for and admiration for people in that industry, because you're always putting other people first, not yourself or your family at times when you're in that kind of world and you kind of live that lifestyle. So I kind of came back and got the resolve I didn't want to do that, and went looking at others. I toured around the state looking at schools, TCU and SMU, and down in San Marcos, UT. Went, just toured these places and never could fit where I wanted to go, and I was kind of struggling to figure that out. And Dorothy Faye White, who she and her husband Jack were significant contributors to TJC, and there's a building that houses the administration, the president's office, and financial aid, and the registrar's office on the campus that was named for them. And Dorothy Faye said, if you don't know where you want to go, I suggest you start at TJC. And I was kind of like a lot of folks that are from here. It's kind of like, well, isn't that really just the 13th grade of your high school? Right. That's the mentality. And it was completely not like that. It was I learned so much at TJC, fell in love with the community there. I was on the student senate, so I got to experience a lot of things that if I'd gone off to another larger university, I may not have been as engaged with. And so it was really very generous. In a couple of months, they're going to recognize me with a very nice award at the college.
That's awesome.
So
congrats.
Thank you. I just got the word from Mitch Andrews, who's their vice president of institutional advancement, and Dr. Mejia, the president, that they were going to was going to be given a special recognition award. And it's nice to just one more connectivity back to the college. And that's where I got onto boards. I ended up becoming on the American Heart Association board. They invited me. I was 19 at the time.
Wow.
Sold tickets, helped them sell tickets to their major fundraiser. Got on the committee. And again, it was a neat opportunity, especially at a younger age. I mean, I didn't really even know a lot of how all of that worked. But it exposed me at that point. And then once I started becoming enmeshed in the community, I didn't want to leave. And that's when I went over to UT Tyler, and I remember one day going over, and of course it was smaller then. I was the last graduating class before the university became 4 years. So it was still a senior level institution at that point, and then they did the downward expansion.
So 15th and 16th grade.
Yeah, exactly. And I got exposed. That's where doors really opened up for me in this field, because Peggy Berry, who she also is a nonprofit management consultant in our community, served on the Heart board, or we were involved in one of the functions. And she said, you ought to come out and talk to John Anderson. And he was the one who ran the institutional advancement office at the Health Science Center. Now, of course, UT Tyler and UT Health Science Center are merged. So they're under one presidency and one development department. But at the time, they were different development departments. And I went out there, got an internship, and my advisor, Dr. McCardle, said, we could make this a career for you. We could make this a degree plan. And they basically created, I don't think there's ever been another one that was created quite like that for a student. And it just was the advantage of coming to a university of that size at that time, where they were able to be very helpful. I mean, not that other bigger universities aren't, but they were,
they could be creative.
Yes.
Whereas in a larger university, it would have been much more structured.
That's right.
And then they would have just put you in whatever pigeonhole they wanted.
That's right.
And said, well, we know that's what you want to do, but this will be the spinoff, and you'll have this degree, and then you'll get immersed in that, and then come out of it however you are. But you got the red carpet.
It was great. And it was a direct exposure to being in development or fundraising. My training was from a gentleman. I mean, John Anderson he'd come from Texas Tech in the late 1980s, and from Texas Tech University here, and was well regarded in his field and did a great job leading the advancement office for the Health Science Center. And so, Laurie Rossman was out there, Peggy Berry was out there, several other folks. But I got to, know those internal staff, but then I was exposed to the community leadership. So I developed a very strong friendship with Doug Ryder, who is a legend in East Texas. There was nobody ever he was just a wonderful, wonderful human being, and head of the bank. It was People's National Bank, and then the successor banks built the Plaza Tower downtown. And in later years built the UT Tyler Carolyn Bell Tower that's named for their family. And, then exposure with Bill Hartley, who ran Southside Bank since its initial inception, and Jim Vaughn of the Vaughn Foundation, Harold Beard, Emma Wise of the Wise Foundation. Just a lot of really key, Vivian Heyman, I had some really great mentors and some great people that I was positioned in. Herb Bowie, he's still going strong in his volunteer efforts at his age now, and he's just some really great individuals that most of them, of course, have gone on, but certainly were indelible impressions on me,
right?
And my ability, their inclusion of me in not just the work I did at my internship, but in other aspects of the community,
sure,
even the political structure here.
Hey, podcast listeners, are you in need of some top-notch libations to elevate your next gathering? Look no further than Hoot and Holler Liquor Store in Gun Barrel City, your go-to liquor store for quality drinks. From smooth bourbons to crisp wines and everything in between, Hoot and Holler has one of the largest and most diverse selections in East Texas. Planning a special occasion? Let our experts guide you to the perfect bottle. You'll receive excellent customer service not offered in the big box chains. Visit Hoot and Holler today and let the good times flow.
That I was able to learn about and
meet people,
how they did.
Have access to folks coming in that are donors, whether local or coming in from out of town, meeting and greeting and being introduced
and it was there's a science behind fundraising and an art to fundraising, and a lot of people akin fundraising to sales, and it is not. That is there are not a lot of hard and fast rules in fundraising, but that's one of them. There's an aspect of that where I can see people can extrapolate it,
sure,
but it's really relationship building. You hear the term people will use networking, and that to me is not as deep as what relationship building is, because that's how you engage people to help you with the cause that
you're to a certain degree you believe in it, so they're investing in you to a certain degree.
Exactly, and you're able to bring part of what I've done, and part of what anybody that is in my role as a nonprofit management consultant, or a development director, and that's just the staff title, or advancement director, or there's several phrases you can use, but with what I do with training and how to help nonprofit organizations, there's a skill set, there's a science, there are steps you take to good ethics and fundraising, and that's part of what my life's goal has been now, and I hope continues to do, is to help make nonprofits better, training their boards to have effective fundraising.
Gotcha. So you get through, of course I did a big on there. You get through your college, you're doing your mentorship. What were some of the first couple breakthroughs that you had, or some of the achievements that you kind of were earmarked for you early?
So when I came out of the university, I was hired, actually I was hired 6 months before I left university by the East Texas Crisis Center and Lana Peacock, who has just recently retired after 27 years as executive director. She was the director of counseling services in the late 80s, early 90s, but had been with the organization for a number of years. And she hired me. She was 6 months into her job as ED, and I was brand new. I mean, I was right out of college. I kind of went through this, it seems like in my life, everything, that can't just happen one at a time. So, I'm graduating from college, I'm getting married, I'm starting this new job, with the organization. And at the time, the organization was, it changed leadership from a long time. Don Franks, who's I can't say enough about the brilliance of Don Franks in the philanthropic community, but Don had gone over to the Fourth Partner Foundation at that point. She'd gone to United Way and then went to the Fourth Partner Foundation and then started her own company. But Don had recently left, so there was a kind of a seismic change, and that's when I met Norman Stockman, and he will always be one of my most ardent supporters, and he was I could never say enough about Norman. So I got to work with Norman under his leadership as the board chair, and then he was the capital campaign chairman, and we basically, with my freshly minted degree from UT Tyler and going into this field of philanthropy, kind of in this backwards circuitous route, Lana Peacock and I embarked together to help raise the money, of course through the board, through volunteers like Norman. There's a structure and a committee, but the two of us being very green at that, we had a successful campaign and raised $4.6 million, and it transformed the East Texas Crisis Center shelter. And it's a beautiful, it's hard to believe, it's over 20 years old now.
Right.
But it really is. It opened in 2003, but we worked on that campaign from the time I started in April of '97 until we, they built the building and it opened in 2003. We worked on that project, and that was really my first foray into nonprofit work. And of course, there were tremendous amount of volunteers.
I was just about to ask you, okay, so what were some of the key learnings, and were there any setbacks?
Oh yeah. We were in the middle. There was another organization in town that was in the middle of a very large campaign, and some of the leadership in the community came in and said, if you can just kind of hold off right now, we'll help you along the way once this other one's completed.
Right.
And there was a lot of learning. There's a lot of really interfacing with people, especially high-level donors, high-level board members. These are usually the CEO types of companies that are going to be involved in this. It certainly was at that point. And so there was one particular lesson I learned. Communication is just the most important aspect of really anything, but I learned it very succinctly when we had approached a community member for a gift. It was a very large gift. It was $60,000. It was a nice size gift for the campaign.
Especially 20 years ago.
And
20 plus.
20 plus years ago, almost 30 now when we were starting the project. But it's a significant gift. And the gift came in, and Norman had been the one who had asked for the gift. He had made the initial ask, and I followed up with the information he asked me to do, and kind of was doing my part of the work. He was the volunteer, and I was doing the staff part of the work. And the gift came in. I thought, well, this is wonderful, great. Well, I didn't bother to pick the phone up and call Norman Stockman and tell him. And so he runs into her at a party, like several nights later, and says, "Oh, well, are you ever gonna to be able to give? You still consider that gift?" And she said, "Well, I sent it in." And what I learned was that was an embarrassing moment that I inadvertently caused by not communicating with Norman, and he let me know. Under no certain circumstances have I ever forgotten that. Of course, it was a great lesson. I needed the lesson.
Sure.
It was not ugly or hateful or anything like that, but it was stern and it was specific.
Yes.
And I learned at that moment, when you're in those roles and you're helping an organization and you're helping key volunteers, you need to be communicative. I mean, that's just the bottom line, is keep everybody in the loop. Don't assume they know what's happening.
Right,
So.
right. What are some professional milestones that you can walk us through, or because you've already talked about obviously a lot of key players that were kind of some of the structure construct of Tyler's and the buildings and all that good stuff. Or what are some of the milestones that you helped champion? Obviously, volunteers were involved, and you had projects you probably worked on with other folks. But
It is. I would say the Crisis Center building is one of my proudest achievements as a development professional. That's such a family violence and sexual assault are such horrific. They're horrific.
yeah,
And to know that you had a part in playing that somebody could sleep in a safe place, certainly gives a lot of impact.
Sure.
Personally, to me.
Yeah.
And, I've been able to, I've had other wonderful projects over the years. From building campaigns like that to signature special events where we had a beautiful event for the Smith County Bar Foundation when they had a 75th anniversary, and Congressman Charlie Wilson came, and Tom Hanks, played him in the movie Charlie Wilson's War.
Yeah.
He came, and just time and again, I could give you lots of examples. One of my most fun, and I value and appreciate her very much. She's a wonderful attorney. She's actually right now head of the Chamber of Commerce, Shannon Dacus. She's the chairman.
Yeah.
Great community advocate, serves on several key boards in the community. And one year, I asked her, we came up for the Discovery Science Place, was a client at the time with my firm, and they wanted a key signature event. And I thought, well, James Bond is cool, and everybody likes that, and we can, it's great to play on. And so I went in and I said, Shannon, I need you to jump out of an airplane. And she said, what? I said, I want you to jump out of an airplane. And her co-chairman was now Congressman Nathaniel Moran. He was county judge at the time. And I said, the two of you will make an entrance over the country club fairway in a tandem dive out of the plane. And she said, okay. And she was a great sport about it, and it was still, one of the highlights of Sunday. That's never really been done.
Yeah.
And it was neat to see them. The guests didn't know that it was going to happen, and so we had all the guests go out onto the fairway for the number one tee box.
Yeah.
And then Stephanie Carter, who's a PA here in Tyler, and she and her husband own My Indie Select. Stephanie sang Adele's Skyfall as Shannon and Nathaniel were coming out of the airplane, so it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
So there have been things like that. A lot of people knew me because I've been involved in so many special events.
Yeah.
That's not the nature. The core special events are one component of the fundraising plan, but if you're going to do them, there's so much strategy behind them because they're labor intensive.
Yeah.
Hard to pull off sometimes, and they're costly, but they've got so much intrinsic value. I like seeing organizations put a lot of strategy behind special events. So
we talked a little bit about, we met before, and we talked a little bit about the part of a project that you enjoy the most. And I think we kind of saw a little bit eye to eye, but for me, it's very much one-sided on projects. Walk us through kind of what you prefer in a project. So we've got...
The Humidor is your online cigar retailing headquarters. Our experienced staff has spent years finding some of the best cigars from around the world to sell to our customers. If you're looking for an online cigar store that can help you find your next favorite smoke, welcome to the Humidor. We began the Humidor because of our deep appreciation of the finer things in life, a good conversation with friends, an aged whiskey, and, of course, a fine smoke. That's why, in addition to selling premium cigars online, we also operate a brick-and-mortar cigar lounge in Tyler, Texas. Our lounge is crafted to provide a classic ambience with modern sensibilities, and we've spent time ensuring that smokers and non-smokers have an enjoyable experience, whether they're there for a drink with friends or to enjoy the game.
There have been times where we've gone into organizations where, you know, the campaign has stalled. Let's say it's a building campaign, and you have to restart it, and you really find out what kind of tenacity volunteers have.
Yeah.
There have been a couple of projects over the years where key volunteer leadership, people that have moved from town, but just stand in my mind as just those relationships and how that, the building of that, to me, is what I love the most.
Right.
Because you talked about the beginning of a project is there's a lot of, you know, nuts and bolts and science to the fact of, you know, we have to raise, you know, $5 million. How does that process happen? You know, and there are specific areas in which that happens, and you know, just that's the science part of it. You know, the art is and are the relationships, are how you ask, and when you get up to make an ask for an organization, you know, whether you're asking somebody for $1,000 or $1 million, there's still, you should, a good professional would put all the strategy they can behind all those gifts, because you're asking somebody to give over a valuable resource, right? And in this world of nonprofit management, it's either time or money. And those are valuable resources that you're asking from people.
Sure.
So setting it up right is important.
Yeah.
Celebrating the successes along the way is, you know, kind of that middle ground where you start to gain traction, and then, you know, obviously when it all comes together, you know, I when I do some training or talks, I usually have these pictures. This is kind of a nerdy thing, but I always like those nighttime soap operas in the 80s, Dallas and Dynasty.
Yeah,
you know, they're all kind of over the top, glamorous stuff. But I've got several pictures I'll put up of what they look like at a party, you know, and then the next one is a scene out of one of those movies like Earthquake or The Poseidon Adventure, where they're all just mangled and you know, they're tired and they've been through this. And that's what it feels like sometimes with the staff, before and after. You know, it all looks great at one point in time until you really dig in and get the work done.
Yeah.
So you got to come out sometimes a little haggard.
Right. Every project that I've been on, I mean, some of it's been nonprofit, some of it has been working for a company. For example, there was a Walmart that I was assigned to that was vacant, and we did all the shelving and the Walmart on 64 in the Loop. Sure. I was one of the first managers in that facility, and so I was in that facility when they migrated from the small store, which I think is cheap as dirt or dirt cheap.
Yeah, over there.
Across the street.
Atwoods.
It's Atwoods now? Okay. I don't.
That side of town.
It was by the CC.
Yeah.
Over on that side, but they were there and they were migrating to the full 24-hour.
Yeah.
And I was one of the first managers to get assigned to that building, and I saw that building completely nothing there. And so what they do is they would take all the managers, and each manager had 6 front staff employees, hourly compensated employees, or whatever you want, clerks. But you had nobody to clerk, and then you would go to a segment of the store, and they gave you a planogram, and then you built shelves, and it was. But one of the parts about it, obviously, that wasn't super fun, but you got to build something, so you got to see progress every day, and then every couple hours they would call us in, and they would have a stage there, and every project that I've been a part of that's been successful has always had some cheesiness to it. Even though people say they don't like it, they still like it to a certain degree, especially when you're cheering together, or you learn to sing cheer, or you call something kind of a quirky name that everybody uses, because it's a code word for example, like if I make a sale or if I close a deal, I ring the bell. That's kind of cheesy when you look at it from the outside in, but then everybody gets to hear it, and they're like clapping for you because they know that you had a success. And so I know that has to be a key, something that probably every project had an earmark of some kind that was similar to that. Especially, I would assume, whenever you have to come back or maybe restart it.
Yes.
Because then it's like, okay, creativity has to take over here, because it's not a lack of effort probably. Maybe you had some players that you had to move around?
Sure, absolutely. No, recognition is a key part
Mm-hmm.
of fundraising and volunteer service. I mean, it is you really can't appreciate a donor or a volunteer enough, and they really will tell you that there's like 7. You really should thank a donor 7 times during the year, not necessarily 7 thank you notes, but 7 meaningful ways you can reach out to those, keep in contact, because volunteers. I mean, and some of it's just wax and wanes. I mean, people have interest levels and then they move on to other things, but for a volunteer to move on because they don't feel appreciated, then that development professional's not doing their job. Yeah. Because you really want to make those people feel. I mean, because again, they're giving you their 2 most valuable resources, right? Their time or their financial resources, and you want to make sure they feel very appreciated. So no, you're exactly right.
Yeah. I think the other thing about a project, and then we can move on. But I was hearing you talk, and to me, I love mystery rooms. Like you go in there with another couple, maybe 2 other couples, or maybe you just go in there as a group, like a team goes in there, and the door locks. You get your first clue, and immediately all these personality and characteristic traits come out. And the same thing happens when you work on a project.
Sure, absolutely.
You've got your introverts and extroverts, and if you're a team player, then you're an extrovert. So hey, I got to throttle back a little bit because I'm not going to be the strength of everything that we do. Yeah. I'm going to fly by a lot of things with my personality because I'm going to want to see progress. I'm going to want to see us be successful. Mm-hmm. But that success can't happen if we're not mired in the details, which is not my strength. It's this other person's strength. And so those are so much fun. I enjoy those, and I can relate to that project and feeling success and then positioning people, and it sounded like you had a lot of mentors that positioned you in a lot of successful ways.
Very kind, very caring. I've had some really great people. I miss them a lot, I will tell you that.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about some of the impacts of Tyler. Was there anything that we missed? Was there I have thumbs again.
I'm grateful for the projects. I will tell you, I got involved early on in the political world and was on Smith County. Mike Jones, who was a Potterman law firm, put me on with the first steering committee when George Bush was running for governor. And so I got to be a part of the trajectory of his ascension and watching those elections and doing that, and then love the political system. I believe we have the greatest nation in the world, right? And we've got a great political structure. It's a little kind of unusual right now in the world that we're living in, but in 1993, I voted. My first person I ever voted for was Judge Diane DeVasto, and Diane won her race by 32 votes, 34 votes, something like that. And when you really work on a campaign and you really work hard and you win by that kind of a margin, that thin margin, you really do know to appreciate it.
Yeah, every vote counts.
And every vote counts. And whatever side of the aisle you're on, I just encourage people to be engaged in our political process from the local level to the national level, finding a place. Voting matters, and it's a consequence of elections, really.
Sure.
So that was just kind of a fun aside that I wanted to mention, Diane.
We talked a little bit at lunch, when we had lunch, about mental health.
Yes.
And you said that was a passion of yours.
It is.
And you kind of gave me some examples of some things that were on your mind and your heart for lunch. Why is that something that you're passionate about? Obviously, not a consultant to be a nonprofit is your career.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's built in you, it's grained into you. Yeah. This is an auxiliary passion. Yeah. Why is that so important?
I think because it's so, it's not as discussed. We talk about health in terms of, we want to make sure your cholesterol levels are good. We want to make sure, that you're, whatever the tests are that we all have, blood pressure, all of that sort of stuff. And it all kind of ties in. And the brain is just an area that we don't discuss And I think a lot of it years ago was set more taboo. People, they would label people crazy or whatever. They didn't understand the science behind brain. And it matters, and brain health is so important.
Yeah.
And what we're doing, a lot of it is discussed more comfortably around, Alzheimer's or some things that people, but even then there was a time, people didn't want to talk about Alzheimer's,
Right.
And I think the brain is such a vital organ, and I think if people understand, and if they understand about themselves, why, if they suffer from depression or they suffer from anxiety or they suffer from schizophrenia, if they can understand what it is and what is happening to them, then they're able to have more fulfilled lives. They're not in that realm. And we as a community, as a society, I think should really be so much more open to discussions about brain health and what the brain does and how it matters, to us. But I think, there was the Peace of Mind conference was started here several years ago, and Mo and Doug McSwain suffered a loss of their son, and this obviously they publicly discussed this, of course, to schizophrenia, and they were one of the first, I can remember when they accepted the TV Butler Award, which is Citizen of the Year. They were one of the first to ever really kind of talk about it and say this is real and it can happen, and it happens to families all across. We just haven't been able to discuss it as a community as much, and it's a new frontier, I think, for a lot of people in a lot of areas, and it's just, clear mental health, better mental health, brain health is just an equivalent to a better life.
Yeah.
And I want people to feel if they are suffering that they can go and talk about it. They can find either help with a therapist or with a close friend that's going to give them the confidence and the right help that they might need. But it's just, I think it's a very valuable topic, and I appreciate you bringing it up, because I would like your listeners to realize that we all have things we suffer with, and it's not necessary to suffer in silence.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think some of this has been programmed, mostly, maybe, I'm not quite as old as you, but I'm pretty close. We're close to the same age, and it's like rub dirt on it,
exactly.
or just hey, look, shake it off, or we don't cry, or
Absolutely.
whatever it may be. And then our grandfathers and fathers were even more so when it came to World War II, and then Vietnam for sure.
Yes.
Like you come back, you don't have any problems because we didn't even want that war.
That's right.
And so that was a tough spot for them to come to. But
No doubt.
you're starting to see more and more athletes, especially ex-football players, come forward to talk about their experiences with blackouts and brain injuries, and some of the things that teams were sweeping under the rug, and now they're not in the moment, and they're not in the NFL's league per se anymore. They're not playing, and they're starting to talk about it more. And I even have seen some players playing with the padded helmet that's padded above the helmet, and you can't even tell from the video camera angles. Like you, obviously, if it's a close up, but if I'm a player, I'm going to do everything I can to protect that organ.
Oh, sure.
I can spare a knee and I can spare an ankle.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be great later on in life, but that's catastrophic.
Yes.
Injury. And the fact that they're talking about it, I like listening to it and helping others to break it down. But I think to your point, there's a lot of people. There's a fighter that just came, or it's been quite a few months. He's Paddy the Baddy. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but he's from England or Ireland, or one of the. He's got an accent, and he's a really good fighter. He's a title contender, and he won a fight. And after the fight, instead of talking about the next steps or how he trained or what was going to happen, he had lost one of his good friends that had committed suicide, and he just urged everybody, look, drop the stigma about being a man, and talk to somebody. I'd rather you talk to me and cry on my shoulder and help, I can give you advice or just listen than for the alternative.
Yeah.
If you are looking for a reputable builder with a proven track record and a client base to back it up, give Red Construction and Development LLC a call. Red Construction offers full design build services for new construction, custom homes, and remodeling with free site evaluations. They have an A+ rating with the BBB and are proud members of the Tyler Area Builders Association, Texas Association of Builders, National Association of Home Builders, and the Lindale Area Chamber of Commerce. Red Construction and Development LLC stands behind the exceptional quality of their work and have the expertise, the resources, and dedication to deliver the results you need on time and on budget. To learn more, give them a call at 903-630-8660 or visit them online at redconstructiondevelopment.com.
Well, and there's so much shame around it, and I think if the work of social scientist Dr. Brene Brown is somebody I follow a lot. I love Dr. Brown and the things that she's put out, and she talks a lot about shame and how corrosive it is.
Yeah.
And that's what causes so much of that.
Yeah.
And that's what we see when people feel that shame and that they feel there's no other option.
Yeah.
And when you get to that point of suicide, you're in a dark, dark place.
Sure.
That, and it's sometimes the mind makes you think you're not going to come back from that, right? And so it's nice to see people and being vulnerable. I mean, there's boundaries obviously in discussing these things,
sure.
right? But being vulnerable to safe people in your life, whether it is a close family friend or a close family member or a professional therapist, is key to realizing the help is available, right? And you don't have to live there,
right?
So I appreciate people who have advocacy for these kinds of causes that are really in everybody's lives. It's just to the degree and how you're educated to handle it and to really understand.
Sure.
The discussions around things like cognitive behavioral therapy,
right?
Those kinds of talk therapy or other ways in which you can reduce the stigma of shame. I think is the most important part. And I would encourage readers, if they're not familiar with Dr. Brene Brown, is to pick up her book. She's written several really key I've used at times in my life that I had some very difficult moments and difficult times, and her research, it's based in social science, so it's relatable research and factual research, but I would encourage them to.
I'd be willing to say most of those safe people that you could talk to have had their own challenges.
Absolutely.
And they've worked through those things, and they have bouts of depression, and sadness, and shame and regret and all those things, but you process it and you digest what you can, and you fight, and then you come back to it if you need to or whatever. I mean, there's ways to process it, and I'm not going to have all the answers either.
No.
So I'm going to say, hey, look, this is where I'm going to listen, but here's my advice. Go see a professional. Go see a licensed professional. Go see somebody, but keep talking.
Yes.
Just keep talking.
And vulnerability is not weakness.
No.
I think there was so much of that. I didn't really equate that was until Dr. Brown said it. I thought, oh, okay, well that makes sense.
Right.
It makes sense. So definitely encourage, and it's great for people like you to use this format, to use your platform to be able to make these kinds of conversations happen, and if a listener out there decides they need some additional assistance or help for a period of time in their lives, I want them to get it, because we have such a short period of time. We're all here anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And if we can enjoy our lives and do the things that make them productive for us, make them valuable for us, move that forward, then I just applaud people like you doing this.
Yeah. So this moves on to the next component is, let's say we have a listener that's interested in what you do, or maybe interested in connecting with you. Maybe they have a project, or They just want to get something off the ground. They want to pick your brain. What are some ways that people can get in contact with you?
So I have a website, willistyler.com.
Okay.
Just my last name and then tyler.com.
Easy enough.
I do work all over East Texas, regional East Texas, and I'm doing some work in Dallas now. I have a new partner organization. My company is Willis Strategic Consulting, and then I work with a group called the Nonprofit Group in Dallas.
Cool.
I'm their East Texas regional affiliate. So we're Paul Dunn, who's the principal of that organization, came from a national fundraising firm where he was an executive vice president and wanted to have a little smaller group in Dallas, and he was actually about to take over for this other group, but he would require him to relocate. So he wanted to stay in the Dallas area, and so he and his business partner Manuel Mesa and their team there at the nonprofit group, and then Laura Zorn that works for me and has for about 10 years, and then we have some ancillary partners, marketing. I work with Carol Roger, with John Pope and Brad Bowles. Those are all great designers and folks that kind of help me in the marketing world with clients.
Yeah.
So I'm about to write a book. My great friend Mike Cobb, who was the headmaster of my children's school for a number of years, went to Saudi Arabia to work on the NEOM project, which is the line over there. He did the educational structure for them. It's fascinating. It's come back to the States and taken a position with Mission and Data. Lives in Winston-Salem, and working for consulting for a school. We're about to write a manual, kind of a training book called The 7 Arenas of Nonprofit Management.
Oh, very
and
cool.
7 areas that you have to pay closest attention to. So I'm really kind of in the next phase of what my company is doing. I really want to do a lot of training. I do have some clients. I work with the Crisis Center of Anderson in Cherokee County now. Great folks over there, and we're doing some hands-on projects where I'm really involved with their executive director and team, board chair, Judge Michael Davis, a great fella, and then Katrina Torres runs the center. So I'm still doing some of that hands-on, but I'm also wanting to get into more of the training aspect as I kind of make some shifts in my career.
Yeah.
And then this past year, March 2023, in a separate capacity from my company, I was named the executive director of the Byers Family Foundation, and they are a wonderful family. That Brent Byers is the president of the foundation. He relocated to East Texas from New York. Was his last job. He was a CFO for a bank in Manhattan. Came back. Their family were doing some great projects, and part of this was started. Used one of their company sales started the foundation. And we get to run it. So I'm also looking forward to being in that world and maybe taking on some additional work in the foundation world. So I kind of have myself in two different spots. I'm helping nonprofits train, and then I'm also in the science of helping the foundation with vetting the applications and making grants, giving money to worthy groups that align with the mission, vision, values of the foundation.
Yeah, so when does this all slow down for you?
I don't know when it is, but I will tell you, I want to give a shout out. We were talking about mental health and taking care of yourself. Our friends at Align Living, they put out a Facebook post, and it talked about, you really sometimes have to slow down in order to be able to speed up, if you're just going nonstop. So taking care of yourself and doing those kind of things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to still do that as well and kind of balance it, because it's right now. I mean, it's a great trajectory that I feel like I'm on with my company and my affiliation in Dallas. The work I'm allowed to do by the Byers family through the foundation. I'm grateful. It is busy, but I'm grateful.
Yeah. So when's it slow down?
Amy Denson was who owns the yoga studio and her own coaching business, and Amy was the one that said that. She said you just need to take those moments and really slow down a little bit in order to do it. So I'm trying to practice that on at least a weekly basis.
Yeah, you're not
unplugged.
You don't see the sunset yet.
I don't
Still afternoon, right?
Yeah, I don't see the sun going down. I'd like to continue to work. I mean, this is a career that you could continue to do well up and I don't foresee myself retiring. went through a divorce several years ago, and then the pandemic, and that really took a toll, the pandemic especially, on my business, because what we do with gathering, that all stopped during that period of time, and clients weren't, no one really knew what to do. There was no manual for that. So I just think from a resource standpoint, I'll need to keep working for a little while.
Well, you've shout out to a lot of people, more than any guest I've ever had. This is episode 28 or 29.
That's great.
You've acknowledged a lot of people that were very influential and impactful to your life. I don't know is there anybody else under the tree that you can bring out?
Well, I can tell you that you talk about having somebody that having a best friend. My best friend lives in Oklahoma City. His name is Chad Muse. He is a great guy. Works for the Oklahoma Oregon Sharing Network. Has done, been there 25 years. Superman. Real proud of him, and those kind of old friends like that are very, very special. When you get to a certain point, you can kind of hang on to those folks. So I love people, and I'm grateful for the people that have been in my life. I mean, I've had really some of the best. I've had some of the best, and I don't take it for granted at all. Like I said, I miss a lot of them because they were so much older when I was starting out in the trajectory of life. You're certainly nice to allow me to do that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a blast.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great getting your story, and also the story of Tyler. I mean, we're hearing a lot of great kind of intricacies to how some of these structures were built, and the work that went behind that is amazing.
Philanthropy is a driving force, and Tyler in regional East Texas has been very, very fortunate. We have a higher than usual rate of family foundations in the community. I mean, I could talk. The Rogers Foundation, what Robin Rogers and Cheryl Parmel and Barbara Copeland and Paul Powell did with creating that entity. It's been one of the most important foundations in our community, and the work they do, the work Whit Ryder does at the Ryder Foundation. I mean, once you start naming them, I'll be somebody off, of course, and then I'll be embarrassed about that. I mean, the Genicos have had a foundation for years. The Watson Wise Foundation. I mean, we have
East Texas has a very giving culture.
Yeah,
it's been there for a long time.
Absolutely, it's great.
It's a great area to be in. Thanks so much for being on.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Well, we're done with episode 28, I believe this is. And our next episode will be at the Beckham Hotel. We're going to go back home for an episode with Alan Patton, our retired homicide detective. He is going to have, we're going to have a live audience, which is going to be cool, and it's going to be interactive. So I'm going to be super excited about hosting Alan at the Beckham and having that audience there. And that'll be on August 29th. So looking forward to that. Until next time, thanks so much for joining us.